long-term survival. I'm probably going to be a zombie. Let's just be honest.
Karen, I will shoot you in the head if I need to.
You probably do that even if you didn't need to. Oh, look, she's drooling. She'd shoot me.
Like the Monty Python skit when he's like, bring out your dead. And he's like, I'm
Bring out
still
your
alive.
dead.
And he's like, no, you're not.
Yeah, look at her. She's limping. She can't keep up. He'd just shoot me. Be over. I know how it's all going to go down. It's okay. I'm not sure I'm made for the zombie apocalypse.
Welcome to the Scary Spirits Podcast. Please be advised that the presenters may use adult language and or discuss adult situations. This podcast is not intended for younger listeners or those that may be easily offended. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Hi, I'm Greg.
Hi, I'm Karen.
And welcome to the Scary Spirits Podcast presents Wicked Ramblings, an entertainment podcast that strives to answer the twisted questions burning a bright hole in your dark soul.
What could possibly go wrong?
Indeed. How are you, Karen?
I'm doing great. How are you, Greg?
I'm good.
Are you excited about our topic today?
I am. How could I not be, Karen?
It's true.
Who doesn't love what we're going to talk about?
I meant more because of our special guest, but we'll get to that.
Well, Karen, what topic are we covering today?
Today, we are dying to discuss the phenomenon of the apocalypse, specifically the zombie apocalypse. Although I think this will be useful for any natural disaster. We're going to dive into the who, what, why, where, and when of how to survive when the undead are after your brains.
Karen.
Yeah.
I saw what you did there. Just so you know, you're wicked clever. Karen, who is our guest of honor today? Who could we possibly have gotten to talk about the zombie apocalypse?
With so many choices, we narrowed it down to one. You want to know who it is?
Oh, do tell.
This person is enthusiastic about zombies, survival, camping, backpacking, and gear. He got his start with zombie survival when he started reading about the subject at bookstores where his dad's band was having gigs. He must have a really cool dad, do you think? He became very interested in the topic and spent the next few years reading and learning more about the subject and developing plans for survival after any number of world-ending events.
Go on.
Who do you think it is?
You tell us, Karen. Tell everyone who our guest is.
Today we have the son of Greg Wallace, Jon Wallace. Hey, Jon.
Hey, everybody. It's great to be back.
Yeah, this is his third appearance on the
yeah.
Scary Spirits Podcast. First on Wicked Ramblings, though. And yes, before you ask, Karen, I used to be in a band and we played gigs at Borders Books and Music Stores.
What was the name of the band?
It was the Richard Adams Trio, Karen.
And what did you play, Greg?
I played the drums, Karen.
Did you play jazz?
Played a little of everything.
Okay.
A lot of Dire Straits.
So, Jon, you would just go off into the section on zombies?
Yeah, I would just explore the bookstore while they played and read any books that struck my fancy. And that's where I found the Zombie Survival Guide, I think it's called. Zombie Apocalypse Survival Guide.
How old were you, would you say?
Probably about, 11 or 12.
Okay. And the book that you found was How to Survive the Zombie Apocalypse, true? That little,
Yes.
what are those survival guides called? Where they just had hints. It's just a bunch of them, right?
Yeah, I think there's a whole series. This one is by Ben Jackson, I believe. I'll have to see.
Well, it's a good place to start for sure. That's
Indeed.
going to spark your interest and get your thoughts going towards, holy shit, what do I do if there's a zombie
Max
apocalypse?
Max Brooks. That's
Zombie
the
Survival
one.
Guide.
Yep. There you
2003 by Max Brooks, who also wrote the what was the novel he wrote, John? That was the blockbuster Brad Pitt movie. Remember that one?
go. World War Z.
Yes, he wrote that as well.
So he was my first foray then.
Well, like I said, that's an excellent place to start. That's going to spark your interest and get you going. All right. So I'm just going to start with a basic question just to kind of get the listener all ready to go into this. What is a zombie, do you think? And are there different types of zombies that we need to watch out for?
Well, I would say, let's start just by kind of defining a zombie. A zombie, as defined by most popular culture, is typically some form of humanoid or animal, in some cases undead, that is moving around, is capable of some basic motor function, but is lacking any real decision-making abilities in the brain. And I'm not versed well enough to say what part of the brain controls those things, as maybe you could, Karen, but they do not have any of that decision-making skill. They don't do anything with a purpose, really. It's all just for the purpose of feeding.
That's the sole purpose, is to find food. Is that why they go after brains, because they don't have one anymore? Or is that just something that...
I'm not sure, honestly. I think I'm not sure exactly where the brains thing came from, because I mean, in most popular media that you see that portrays zombies, they kind of just end up eating
George Romero. That's where that came from.
Oh, did he
Night of the Living
that?
Dead. Yeah, I think that's where the
brains came from.
Yeah, I think that's
okay.
Where it came from.
But in most recent zombie culture, they eat everything.
Yeah, they seem to be more like hogs. They don't seem to be too picky about what they eat.
Do you know if there are different types of zombies? Are there? I only ask that because I don't know. Is 28 days about zombies or vampires? Do you know? And 28 days.
It's about zombies.
Because some of them in the movies move very slowly and kind of haphazardly, and others in the movies move very quickly with a very defined purpose.
In World War Z, they are very quick.
So
Yes.
Is that just someone's depiction of different zombies, or do you think there are potentially different types of zombies?
I think largely, at least for now, it kind of breaks down to what people's chosen depictions are of zombies. There's actually kind of a two-pronged approach I would take to answering the question. I would say, number one, it kind of determine what base manner of zombie that you're dealing with. And what I mean by that is kind of what we've already discussed. You've got like the slow shuffling zombie, and then you've got the fast, quick sprinting type zombie that you see in World War Z. And I'm not sure, I can't remember if they're in 28 days later as well, or if it's just 28 weeks later in which they run. But either way, I think those are your two base subcategories, and then each one of those has any number of categories depending on which popular media source you're looking at for your zombie.
Would you like to hear Merriam-Webster's definition of a zombie?
Absolutely.
Well, it is a noun, Karen.
Okay. Can it be an adjective too? It seems like it can be.
Yeah. So definition 1A, a willless and speechless human, as in voodoo belief and in fictional stories, held to have died and been supernaturally reanimated. 1B, the supernatural power that, according to voodoo belief, may enter into and reanimate a dead body. 2A, a person held to resemble the so-called walking dead. 2B, a person markedly strange in appearance or behavior. Karen.
Okay.
And then definition 3, a mixed drink made of several kinds of rum, liqueur, and fruit juice. I like that one.
Yeah. We missed our opportunity there.
Apparently has a lot to do with voodoo.
It does. I know that. But in the movies, it doesn't seem to be that way. It kind of seems like sometimes it's a virus or something.
And actually the word zombie derives from the Haitian French and the Haitian Creole.
That makes sense. Well, I think maybe they made the faster zombies because the slower zombies, even though scary, did seem like you could outrun them or outsmart them. The only way you get killed is if you get injured or there's just too many of them.
And a horde. Yeah.
Right. There's a horde. But the way to make that scarier, right, is to make them quicker.
And in some depictions I've seen, they even have them gain the ability over time to use weaponry.
Yes.
Well, and the zombies that come from the voodoo religion, they have a purpose. They're coming to usually be karma. Going back, they have a specific job to do and they do it. So I think it's a little different than what we're talking about.
Yeah, in the voodoo, a voodoo person might create a zombie to just attack especially one person.
Yes, exactly. To exact revenge or something. But they usually have a specific mission. So I just mentioned briefly, what's your theory on how this could all begin? You think in a lab somewhere and a virus escapes? Is that pretty common? Or is there something else that aliens, what's the deal? What's the common?
I definitely wouldn't rule out a virus, Karen. But one of the actual other common ones that you see in a lot of different media types across video games, movies, books, and even a little bit in real life is actually fungal infection.
Oh, okay.
So I do not know the name of it offhand, and I should have looked it up before recording this, but there is a fungus that grows in the Amazon that has a predatory response or predatory relationship with this certain type of ant, where these ants get this fungus on them, and the fungus overtakes the brain and has the ant essentially do whatever the fungus wants the ant to do to help spread the fungus out and secure more area for it to live.
Yes, John, that would be called Ophiocadorceps unilateralis.
You probably should have let Karen do that one.
Well, she doesn't have it in front of her, John. It's the zombie ant fungus.
Because fungus has spores, and so spores can be released in massive quantities. So that would be a less direct one than, say, a virus where people get it and then have to bite you to give it to you. A fungus and the spores would be much more arbitrary on who got it and who didn't. That's a little more scary, actually, because how do you can't see that. So that would be a tough one to keep from getting it.
Yeah, exactly.
It grows at exactly 25 centimeters above the fourth floor. No more, no less.
Well, I guess you could. But can you imagine you're walking along and you just walk into a patch of it and it all just, it's like pollen. It just explodes all around you.
That would be terrible.
Yes. That's going to give me nightmares. Thanks for that.
Oh, yeah, there it is. It's the little worm thing coming off of the ant there.
Yes, I am sharing my screen, showing a picture of this fungus. Here's the word, Karen, if you would like to give it a try.
Ophiocordyceps unilateralis.
Yeah, you did better than I did.
Barely.
That's quick.
I missed the "-less" at the end of unilateral.
Yeah, otherwise you were flawless, Greg. Otherwise you killed it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I
knocked that shit right out of the park, Karen. That's what I do.
Okay, so we're just going to jump to there's zombies everywhere. Okay. We're hearing the news reports. It's on the radio. However it happens, it happens.
What do you do? What do we do?
So I know the answer to this question because you and John, you and Greg both have talked about it at different times, both when you've been on the podcast and when you haven't. But do you have a plan in place for the apocalypse?
Yes, we do actually.
All right, so what I'm asking now is, are you willing to share? You don't have to give specific places or anything, but what is the overall plan?
I will certainly, I'm not going to give away
Give
the
some
plan,
generalities
but I'll give
about-
some general tips and tricks of developing a plan.
Because a plan is
zombie
important.
apocalypse hits, John. Where do you want to go?
Yeah. So ideally, if you're prepared, ideally you would have up to, I would say a good number would be 3 to 6 months of supplies back stored in your own home that you already live in. Granted, this is going to be very dependent on the area of which you live and how densely populated it is. But a lot of times you're going to be a lot better trying to ride out the initial response of this in your own home, where you have access to everything you need. You know the layout. You know exactly where the weak points in the area are. You know where you can get a good vantage point on the area around. And you generally do know the area around if you do have to venture out.
So when you're buying a new home, people, pick one on high ground.
Without a lot of people around.
And I'm guessing now, looking at my house, not with a lot of windows that could be broken
Windows aren't
into.
bad, I don't think. For the beginning, I don't think windows are bad.
You just have to be extra mindful of having fires and lights on at night if the electric grid's still up and things like that.
Okay, so the first thing is, and I would imagine water and food are essential. That's what you're talking about, right? When you say supplies, and probably your medications, if you are on medications, and because if you're in your home, you're going to have clothes and blankets and things like that, right?
Exactly.
So, let's just talk about the bug out bag right now.
Okay. Well, this is okay. So it's been going on, right? So you've used most of your stuff.
Yeah,
I would imagine. So the bug out bag is going to be, you're going to have to leave your house because there's nothing left here for you and they're encroaching. Would you say?
Yeah.
Greg, is that what you mean?
Sure. Yep.
Okay. What's in the bag, John?
I mean, the short answer.
So first is, what is it? What is a bug out bag?
The bag itself is usually a bag that is loaded with enough supplies and enough equipment to keep one person going for usually 24 to 72 hours on foot, roughing it kind of out in the wilderness.
So it's like a duffel bag then.
Duffel bag, hiking backpack.
Oh, that's true. Could be a backpack would be good.
Any backpack or
easier
bag.
To carry.
Exactly. Keeps both your hands free at all times.
I agree. So, okay, we're talking a backpack. I'm sold on the backpack. Okay, what's in it?
Well, that's going to largely be determined by, again, your personal needs. If you have any medications or anything like that you're going to need to make sure you have stockpiled, to include anything, food, water, obviously, is going to be paramount. Something to create shelter, cutting tool of some description, ideally multiple. If I could give any expertise on that particular subject, I would say it's always going to be better to go with a fixed blade wherever possible, but consult your local knife laws before going out and trying to buy something and having it shipped to you or expecting to find it locally. But I would say have a good sized 4 to 6 inch blade, fixed blade knife in the bag as well. And then don't forget about your car as well. You can always load your car down with as much stuff as it can carry to try to get you as far away as possible, as long as you have some clear paths or a capable vehicle.
And gasoline as well.
Yeah, because gas is going to be the limiting factor. So you mentioned water, and water's heavy, right? So are you thinking, have you seen those filters that you can drink right out of the stream with? Have you tried anything like that?
Yeah, like a Life Straw.
Yeah. Are those
Yeah.
effective?
Yeah, I've used those. They also, a lot of backpacking outfitters and sporting goods stores will sell portable pump water filters that you can just hold in your hand, put one side in the dirty water, one side in your water bottle, and you just pump it and it pumps out clean water. I've got one of those as well, in my personal one.
Because I think that would be better than trying to carry jugs of water, right?
It would. And that's why I also mentioned about the car, because that's where you're going to, ideally, if you can use your vehicle, that's where you're going to put the things that are heavy that you don't want to carry on your person.
Right. And you can use it for shelter too, as long as you can, right?
Exactly. And I would also say it's still good to have at least 24 hours worth of water for yourself in the bag, along with a filter. Especially with, the modern day way of building homes with all this tract housing and all this, a lot of times you might find yourself in an area where there isn't any water within a 24-hour walk. So you're going to need to have some with you as well.
That's true. I guess I've grown up in places and always lived in places where there was some sort of stream or something,
Well, the AARP, Karen and John, suggest in your bug out bag.
Oh, excellent.
Wait, oxygen, your walker.
No. At least one, since we're talking about water, at least 1 gallon of water per person per day.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good amount.
And at least enough food and water for at least 3 days. So you need 3 gallons of water per person.
Yeah, so you're going to need your car.
Unless you have, like John said, like a filter. What did you call it, John? Straw thing?
Well, there's the life straw, which you can just directly put into a dirty body of water and drink straight through it. And then there's tons of filtration.
How long do those last? Just out of curiosity. Does the filter clog?
I believe they're rated for 100,000 gallons.
Yeah, it's rated by gallons.
Okay.
But what about like iodine tablets or?
Well, that's what I was going to say is if you're somewhere where you can't easily get a pump, or maybe you don't have internet access for some reason.
Well, it's a zombie apocalypse, John. There's no internet.
I'm talking about right now, because ideally you're watching this right now to prepare for the future. So if you don't have
to prepare for the future.
If you don't have internet, I don't know how you're listening, but good on you. And we thank you for figuring it out.
We'd like to know.
Oh, yeah,
if you're listening without internet, please email us.
Maybe it's that free internet that Elon Musk is working on or something.
Oh, that's Starlink.
But
anyway, there's the pumps, there's the life straws, there's pour through charcoal filters that come in water bottles where you just pour it straight into the top and it filters through. You can boil your dirty water. That will take care of any pathogens and things that'll make you sick, but it's obviously not going to take care of any dirt or anything like that. Then you have iodine tablets, you have UV pens that you can use, but those obviously run off batteries, which can be a problem in the apocalypse. A multitude of options.
And a lot of this stuff is like you can get it like Bass Pro Shops online or whatever in their camping section. You know what I mean? Right, John?
A lot of it you can get at Walmart.
Yeah. Any place that has camping
section. Yeah.
There's countless videos on YouTube of guys going to a place like Walmart with a budget of, say, like $200 and seeing what kind of quality of a bug out bag they can put together for that amount of money.
It's probably pretty good, I would say.
Yeah, you can get a lot of good stuff there. You get food there. You get water there.
So we talked about water, so let's talk about food. You just brought it up, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of food are we going to want to put in our bug out bag?
Ideally, you want something that is going to keep for a long time, because this is something, the bug out bag itself is something you're going to, for the most part, want to stick in the corner of a room or in the back of your car and kind of forget about until you need it.
Or right by your door, right, John?
Exactly, as I'm sure the AARP suggests.
That's right, especially if you're elderly and, you got to call 911 and they come and get you. You can, hey, grab that bag by my door.
Well, that's more for, I don't think that's for the zombie apocalypse. That's
no, but
more
it's still
for-
a good thing to have, right?
Yes. I would say I'd put it,
Especially with medications and like
yes,
some
that's
money,
more for
some
medication.
personal essentials, maybe,
A
which
change
we
of
may
clothes.
probably
Yeah.
get to, but go on, John, about food. Sorry, I interrupted.
So you want something that's going to keep for a long time. My suggestion is always going to be like pre-packaged, freeze-dried meals. Mountain House makes them. There's another company that is escaping me right now. I think it's called Gourmet something or other, but they make a good one. And as far as, you want high calorie, low weight. So all the things that everybody tells you not to eat
That's
normally,
what you want to eat.
that's what you want in there. You want the candy bars, the things that are going to give you the most energy for the lowest amount of weight.
Have you tasted those freeze-dried?
Oh,
foods?
they're terrific.
Really? So you just
Yeah.
add water and cook them?
Yeah,
You boil them? How do they work?
You'll boil the water first, usually. You'll measure it out, boil it. Directions are right there on the package, just like almost any other prepackaged meal. And you just dump the water in there. You seal it shut. It's got like a little zipper, kind of or like a Ziploc thing on the top.
Mm-hmm.
You zip it shut and you let it sit for 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the meal. And it comes out, and it comes out very tasty. The chili mac is very good. And I don't know how they do it, but I've had their biscuits and gravy breakfast before from Mountain House. And they managed to somehow get the biscuits to stay fluffy and not soggy
No.
after you rehydrate it.
That's crazy.
Well, that all sounds expensive, John.
It is. It's not the cheapest thing in the market.
Yeah, just like protein bars, granola bars, right?
Yeah, protein
trail
bars.
mix.
But you eat these right out of the bag, right?
Yeah.
And there are different types of apocalypses, of course, but if you're talking a tornado kit, or when we were in California, we had an earthquake kit, and they suggested you had enough food or water, like you said, for 3 days or so. For 3 or 4 days, these would be great. For years, sure, you're not gonna, unless you get to a Bass Pro Shop and can steal them all during the apocalypse, you're going to have limited numbers. So you're right, protein bars and things like that. But
and that's why we recommend stocking up now before it happens. So they sell, Mountain House specifically makes a bucket kit that is, I believe, I'd have to look it up, but I think it's like 72 hours per bucket for a family of 4 or so.
What's the shelf life on something like that? If we want to buy it now, I mean, how long will it last us?
Let me actually look it up here, but I think Mountain House is 10 years.
Huh.
So we're looking at 30 years for a Mountain House.
Really?
Yeah. So you can keep those guys around for a while.
That's pretty good.
And I mean, if mountain houses are a little too expensive, I mean, I think a mountain house runs on average, I think it's somewhere between $7 and $11 per pouch, and each pouch contains 2 servings for an adult.
Okay.
So you get 2 meals technically per pouch.
But you would have to make them at the same time.
We used to make it all at once, but if you have some at least,
So you can't have one if you're one person. You can't have one for lunch and one for dinner, probably.
I would not. I would try to ration it out appropriately. If you made the chili mac for lunch or something, I would eat the rest of it for dinner that night so that it doesn't have an opportunity to go bad with no refrigeration, but you're not going to, open up a new meal and add to the stuff you're carrying around.
Right.
And, I was telling Karen, the mountain houses have a Ziploc on the top. So you don't even have to transfer it to another container. You just zip it shut and put it in your bag.
Right. Yeah, I heard. Well, that's pretty impressive. 30 years, Karen, shelf life for that stuff.
Well, it's freeze dried, so it's probably longer than that.
Okay.
That's probably just as long as they're allowed to say that.
Right. They just want you to buy more if it lasts 30 years. So speaking of bug out bags, and you were just kind of talking about it, where they go into the store with the budget and put together a bag. What do you think people think they need that they don't really need? in that bag or in general? What do you think people buy right away and then find that it's not really necessary?
As far as things that aren't necessary, I would say some things that I bought starting out when I was getting into backpacking that I never ended up using was anything that's going to cause any unnecessary weight. So if you've got, you might think you need extra pouches to put things in and organize them on the outside of your backpack or anything like that. A lot of the time, it's better just to try to use dry bags or even those drawstring backpacks that you get free at every event that you go to ever. And you can use those to organize your things because they almost weigh nothing. You just shove them all down into your pack and everything lives in the main compartment. Anything else I would say that is not necessary really is you don't need as much clothing as you think you do. You don't need to be packing multiple outfits. What you need to be doing is you need to be focusing on your layering when it comes to your clothes. So like a base layer, a mid layer, a top layer, and then, a shell layer for water and things like that. And I would avoid anything aside from that. And
what about like fire starter, like sticks and stuff like that?
Well, you can never have enough fire starting materials because fire is life. So you can't have enough of that stuff. But as far as any other things I would avoid taking, you don't need, if you bring a fairly decent sized fixed blade knife, as I talked about before, you don't need to bring an axe. You're not going to be chopping down trees. You can get almost any job you can do with an axe. You can also do with a fairly decent sized fixed blade.
What about a collapsible saw?
Collapsible saw is a really, really good thing to take, especially like a folding garden saw is a really good idea.
But would you rather have that or a chain, like one of those chainsaws? You know what I'm talking about, John?
Yeah, the handheld chainsaws, from what I've seen, have a tendency to break. They're not as well made. So I would just go for the dedicated saw for the weight.
That is more weight, though.
It is more weight, but you're also probably never going to have to replace it if you take care of it.
Okay.
Don't you need the axe to kill the zombies? No?
You can use many things to kill zombies.
That's true. Okay.
We haven't got to that yet. So,
all right. So if you bug out with your bag, do you think you'll be better suited for survival if you're on your own or with a group? And I'm not talking.
Is there
family.
Safety in numbers, John?
Kind of. Yeah. Like if you ran into a random group of people, would you join or would you stay on your own?
If it's a random
family is family, you're stuck with them. But
yeah, if it's a random group,
and
people,
family knows if you have to kill them, you will, right? This is what you got to do, right, John?
Well, some of them do. I mean, some people might not.
Some people have agreements, apparently, that if they start to turn, the other one shoots them.
No. We don't shoot. We use melee weapons so that we don't waste ammo.
Oh, my bad.
That's what the axe is for, Karen.
See? I knew you needed the axe.
Or a hatchet. I mean, axe. When you think of axe, you think
I'm thinking hatchet. Yeah. Okay.
Think of like a Paul Bunyan axe or some shit. Right. No, not that.
No, I meant a hatchet. I was misspoke.
All right.
But anyway, safety in numbers are on your own.
I would say if you don't start out with a group, it's always going to be easier to move quietly and kind of keep a low profile if you're by yourself. And you're not going to have to worry about, the actions of anybody else, kind of screwing you up.
Karen, did you have any group projects in your schooling?
Well, I think it also probably depends on your skill set, right? John, obviously, from this discussion, you can tell you have good survival skills. So on your own, yes, you're going to do well. But someone who, I don't know, let's say me, doesn't have those survival skills necessarily. It might be in my best interest to try to find a group of people to help me, right?
Yeah, I would say, and maybe it just depends on, again.
Yes, John. Karen needs all the help she can get.
Well, that's just in general.
Something I was going to mention earlier that I didn't get to was just, I think something you have to think about a lot that a lot of people don't take into consideration is location. So where are you going to be? So if you're going to be someplace where you feel that there's people around you that you can easily trust and aren't going to, hurt you, do anything to you, steal all your stuff, anything like that, then that's a good group of people to join. If you're fine in your house by yourself for some time, I would not go out seeking a group of people to bring.
And I shouldn't let
fold.
people in either. Then.
No, I would also not let anybody in either. No, I would say definitely do not limit the interactions you have with other people that you're not familiar with.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
You put Jack in a northern window. You put Louis in a southern window.
Well,
upstairs in your house.
You don't let anyone. I get the whole trust thing is important. I get that, especially as we've seen the pandemic. There are a lot of people just everybody's out for themselves. So you have to trust the people that if you're in a group, that's how you have to do it. You have to make sure they have your back, basically. Yeah, they're not going to trip you when the zombies are running at you.
Yeah, and just
to get away.
And just because you're friendly with Ted next door doesn't mean that when the apocalypse pops off that he's not going to kick in your front door and try to take all your food.
Right. Exactly.
People will do what they need to do to protect them and theirs.
Not if I get their food first, right?
Exactly. Now you're thinking on your feet.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so if you can surround yourself with people you trust or go on your own, if that's but most people at this point, especially when you get old, like I am, there are people around you.
Yeah.
It would be difficult for me to say, okay, you guys handle it. I'm going out, good luck. So as a family in your plan, you have a meeting place, I would assume. That's always a good thing to have, right? Somewhere where to go, because you might not be together when this happens, whatever it is, right? Whether it's zombies or a tornado or an earthquake or whatever. You say, because if cell phones are down and there's no way to contact each other, you're going to go someplace and wait for your family members.
Exactly. And that kind of goes back to the bug out bag when designing it with the 24 to 72 hour time period in mind. Is ideally you want to pick a meeting place that, and this will vary, your mileage may vary depending on where you live and how close you are to family and friends and things like that. But you want to pick a place that ideally everybody in the group can get to within that 24 to 72 hour time window from anywhere that they would typically find themselves on a daily basis. So that's home, the grocery store, the workplace, a family member or friend's house, anything like that, where they may typically spend a lot of time. You want to pick a place that everybody in the group can get to in that amount of time from anywhere they might be.
And that's only assuming that your home is not the available place to be for whatever reason. Maybe you're at the epicenter, maybe, when this happened, electrical fires took everything out. I don't know, whatever. Right. But assuming your home is not.
Yeah. As driving around, traveling, those houses always stick out to me. I'm like, that'd be a good place to meet at the zombie apocalypse. They got a good spot right there. But yeah, it always occurs to me when I see good places.
But that's it's an important thing to have a place where you can, that's even true if there's a fire or anything, always, because then who is out and who you're waiting for, right? I mean, they do that in school fire drills. Each class has a certain place to go, so it's not chaotic.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason why you want to have a spot, at least to meet up at first, that might be different than your home is, let's say there's a member of your group that does live near you, but works 3 towns over. that person, if you're going to include them in the group and take them into consideration, your house might not be the best place for them to get to from their workplace, let's say, within that 24 to 72 hour period. So you would want to have somewhere that is, somewhere ideally equidistant for all parties to travel to, meet up, and then decide where you're going to go to from there.
And also, your house may not be the best. I mean, do you have a creek running through your backyard? Do you have access to water? Are you down in the valley or up on a hill, or, what's the deal? I mean, sometimes your house isn't the ideal place for long-term survival when the shit hits the fan.
But that's where all your food is if you've been stocking up. So but as John said, if you can get to your car and load it up, that's, you're going to be, as long as it's ready to go.
Yeah. And when I was talking about, ideally staying at your house for the first 3 to 6 months or what have you, that's also, I should have mentioned, assuming that this happens when you're at your home or very close to it. If everybody's, if it's in the middle of the day on a Tuesday and everybody's at work, the home is not going to be the ideal spot to go to immediately.
Well, it depends.
It depends.
How far away do you work
Exactly.
from your home, really?
Yeah, if everybody
and it also depends on
is there going to be gridlock on the highway? Do you have
how much chaos
back road you can go to?
Right.
Yeah.
That's another thing, having a plan of back roads to get to where you need to go to, right? Not going where you think there will be gridlock, if there is gridlock. And speaking of that, so I'm assuming that you're going to look for less populated areas over time, right? Because if it's a fungus or a virus or whatever, being away from other people is probably to your benefit, correct? So yes?
Yeah, I would definitely say that's the goal, is try to get away from not even civilization necessarily, but population density as possible. Especially with the zombie apocalypse, we've had discussions about this before. There's options that need to be considered depending on, what kind of zombies we're dealing with, as we've already kind of discussed. The zombie is going to be somewhat affected more often than not, I would say, with some of the ailments they had and some of the limitations they had in life. Mm. And if you are already 98 years old when you become a zombie, you probably don't have that much time before things, really start to go south for you as a zombie.
You're not a threat.
So,
True,
given that, you got to look at areas that I would say are less populated and maybe have a higher density of elderly folks.
So say like Florida.
Yeah.
Well, but
it is densely populated though,
It is, but you could probably,
but if you could make it to Key West or something, especially, right? There's one way in, one way out, right?
Yeah, and you could probably, with a good sized group of 10 or 12, clear that island pretty easily over the course of a couple of days.
When you say clear that island, what does that entail, John?
That means getting rid of all the undead at your discretion.
The unfavorable.
And potentially the unfavorable if they've found their way into your group. Yes.
So it would be easier for zombies to walk along, say, freeways than through woods, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So you've got to consider those kinds of things also.
So this brings up an interesting point. So, John, can zombies walk underwater?
Traditionally, what I understand to be the case is a zombie can walk underwater, as they don't require oxygen to stay alive. They don't breathe.
Yeah.
So as long as they can sink to the bottom and not float.
I was going to say, can't they just backstroke over?
But see, Karen, they don't have the mental capacity in most cases
I see.
to put together the thought of, I should butterfly here and backstroke here.
And plus they're, oozing lots of pus and shit, and probably the fish will eat them.
Well, that's the same if they're underwater, though.
Yeah,
right?
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
but if there's enough of them.
I would definitely say if you found yourself on an island, if it does only have one way in and one way out, I think your biggest problem is going to be something noticing, a zombie, if you will, noticing that you are on this island, deciding to make his way over there and just taking the most direct route possible, walking along the ocean floor for however many yards that is to get to the island, and then just coming up right on the beach, and boom, here he is.
Which seems like it would be easy to, what did you say? Take care of them. What did you call it?
Dispose of at your discretion.
Yes. But that's all good unless it's
Clear.
a fungus.
You got to clear
yes,
it.
He said clear it. But if it's a fungus and it's wafting across, you don't need a zombie to give it to you. So you're dealing with still infection on the island. If you don't have to be bitten.
Yeah, it depends on if it's airborne or
right.
Which, yeah, and if it's airborne, I mean, honestly,
everybody's
as we've seen, the past couple years, everybody's pretty much screwed unless you're somehow naturally immune to it. So at that point, a lot of this is the mileage will vary on a lot of this advice, because if you're not there to heed the advice, then it's not really going to be
right. So we're talking more about if it's you're protecting yourself from being
infection.
Being bitten by a direct infection from another zombie.
Or you might find yourself on vacation on a cruise ship or something where nobody's been exposed yet, or something like that, where it maybe hasn't made its way there. So you've got some time to kind of think about some things and plan the next steps.
I think that's the worst place I want to be. It's on a freaking cruise ship, because you got nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Well, you got a ton of people around you too.
The good part about a cruise ship, though, is it does operate as its own miniature city. You know what I mean? It has infrastructure,
and disease spreads in that city quickly.
Yes, it does, as it will.
Okay, well, speaking of that, so that might not obviously be the perfect place to go, but Greg and I watched Anna and the Apocalypse, and we kind of got into a discussion about, are there pre-made places that would be perfect to go toward? And in this movie, there's a school, and right next door, there's an army base
right next door.
Okay. But in the school, well, I'm sure there's food on the army base, but in the school, what they showed was there was food, right? Yeah. And you can kind of protect yourself there, because you could board it up, but you're stuck.
Yeah, it was a pretty secure school, and it had fence with barbed wire around the top and everything. So, I'm not sure what they were teaching there. If it was so.
But you would think army bases, schools, or even prisons, right? Because prisons have guard towers. You would think that would be a good place to go, and it should be secure. So, are there?
But you got to get rid of all the prisoners, Karen.
Well,
right, John?
Yeah,
you got to clear it out.
That's a factor.
So John's got to. Well, if they all are infected and left, I mean, the army base was pretty empty in the movie, correct?
Karen, have you ever watched The Walking Dead?
No, I haven't.
You don't remember when they went? So you don't know when they went to the prison? And
no, I don't know what happened.
It was a good place to go, but it was a lot of work to make it safe, and in the end, it really wasn't. I mean, they could have made it. I think they could have stayed there, John, if they were, but it's a TV show.
What about like Alcatraz? That would be a good place, right?
Alcatraz would be a terrific
place. That would be a great place, because it's a old prison that's not inhabited by anybody. Just like the Ohio State Reformatory in Mansfield, Ohio. That would be an awesome place.
But that's big.
Yeah, it would take a lot to keep it secure, but
yes.
Here's the thing, though, that you got to think about. It takes a lot to keep a place that big secure, but you only need to inhabit as much area as you need, and then you can expand outward from there. So if you've only got a group of 10 people,
but at this point, John, we're not worried about the zombies. We're worried about the living, right?
Well, yes. If this is the onset of everything happening still, your main concern is still other living people trying.
What do you mean trying to kill you?
You can keep, like, if you went to, for example, if you went to the Ohio State Reformatory, right, in Mansfield, Ohio, you could protect it and secure it from zombies easily, right? You don't have to inhabit the whole thing. You can just inhabit one wing, right? And there's like 3 or 4 wings. But if other people come, that's your problem, right?
Who have the same idea, you mean?
Yes.
Well, they can have their own. So you're talking about when there's not another wing available and
Or-
somebody's trying to take your area.
Or
I don't
even
know.
even if
I
there
don't watch
is
them.
another wing available, you always want more, Karen. You always want more. And I'm not gonna trust, Joe Schmo from down the street who's like, well, let me just live in cell block C and you guys can stay in D and we'll leave each other alone.
Or from Cleveland. Not even down the
Yeah,
street. He's probably
exactly.
from Cleveland.
Yeah,
Actually,
know.
they
What do you-
probably get there
what-
first. We'd have to kick them out, John.
Okay, so again, we're back to people that you trust. So you were talking about long term, like 6 months or long. Okay. I mean, at some point, zombies are everywhere and it's a routine for you to try to keep it together. So at this point, you're going to have to start planting food or.
Yeah. So this comes up, what skills are essential, including farming and killing and hunting and whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Dude, wait, so stop before you do that. Speaking of hunting, do zombies only go after humans or are they wiping out like the deer and what is the wildlife population going down with them too? Or how's that work?
I would say it would definitely probably affect the wildlife population. And I think you would see.
Anything that's easily accessible, depending on
Yeah.
what zombies you're dealing with, right?
Okay.
You're not going to chase down a deer.
No, they're not going to catch a deer unless a horde overtakes it and surrounds it or something like that. But a single zombie by itself is never in.
But they
most
might
cases
they
gonna
might
catch
find
deer.
someone shoots a deer with a bow and they can't trace the blood trail and the zombie finds it, they'll probably eat it, right?
Yeah, or if the deer is diseased and is slower or is injured, and honestly, that's not a deer you want anyway, so they can have it.
But zombies are usually in groups. Is that true? Because it doesn't seem that in the movies they're singular wandering around the woods. They do seem to find each other somehow.
They usually group up, but I think that's usually shown as a symptom of the fact that they tend to just work their way towards whatever they see
Towards what
or
food
hear.
is available or something.
And so if one zombie, they also kind of seem to, in most cases, as shown, I'm reticent to use the term hive mind, but they all have that same one track thinking. So if one zombie all of a sudden who was just shambling down the street aimlessly turns and looks at something and heads off in that direction, it would seem reasonable that the other zombies would be like, oh, well, let's go in that direction. And
something catches their eye, maybe. Does shiny or
shining or movement or
movement.
noises.
Oh, because movement they would think might be food, right?
Exactly.
So yes, gotcha. So
And-
they're going to
and-
kind of congregate just naturally.
Yeah, because they're going to see each other shambling around and maybe even mistake each other for food at first until they get close enough to realize that, no, this is not what I'm looking for.
But why? Why are they not cannibalistic? Because their muscles and such are not enjoyable, or what's? Because
I think it's usually chalked up to the fact that whatever is causing the foretold apocalypse here, so to speak, is usually going to be a virus or like that fungus that we discussed, which are things that their main goal on the planet is to make themselves spread as far and wide as possible. So they don't want to influence their host to kill other hosts of the same virus or fungus because
that defeats their purpose.
Yeah, that defeats their purpose of trying to spread as far as they can.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so we're out. We've left the house. We're out on our own. Do you think any technology will survive? Like, what would you grab your cell phone or for, I don't know, using it as a flashlight for a while, or the GPS to show you where you are? Is any of that useful? As long as, because the satellites aren't going to fall out of the sky, right?
Well, what kind of music am I going to listen to, Karen? I'm going to need my phone for my music.
Well, you can use solar panels to charge your phone and stuff. So there are ways to take technology with you.
Yeah, I would definitely say take some with you. Most cases you're going to have your phone on you nowadays anyway. So there's no sense in leaving it behind. Just take it with you. And as long as the cell towers are still active, you still have access. And for anything else, when the cell towers become inactive,
but they should remain
function.
active for quite a while, because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they can run without anybody, monitoring them for the most part, unless
the only thing
people
Go
get
ahead.
crazy and start, cutting wires and, tearing them down or something.
Yeah, the biggest things that I think would influence the cell phone towers is one, just time, and if there's any sort of EMP type event for some reason, or
Well, and lack of repair too. Yeah, like time.
lack of repair over time, or if the grid just straight up goes down. If the entire grid for the area that you find yourself in just goes down, I'm sure there's probably some backups in place for the cell towers, but I would imagine they would also kick anybody who's non-essential off of the service and reserve what bandwidth is there for what they're deeming as essential communications. 911, that kind of thing.
But there are solar chargers for your phone. Are there solar chargers for anything else? Heaters? What could you grab?
A lot of stuff that you'll find in like hiking outfitters and things like that have solar chargers built in. So there's like solar powered radios, solar powered flashlights,
Crank powered.
They still sell the crank powered ones as well. And then, your phone, like what Greg was saying about music, it's also good for that. And what you're saying about being able to keep it charged, there's also other resources available. There's apps that have like, on phone survival manuals for somebody who's maybe not as well versed in survival, or really just anybody should have it on there that's accessible when you're offline. So you can still go on your phone, look up survival tips and, things about plants that you can eat and stuff.
Oh, wait. So what is this app? This should be in the show notes.
The one I have is just called Survival Manual. And the app icon for it looks like a green journal with a tan compass sitting at the bottom of it. And it is available to you offline. So once you download the app, you have the entire, you have access to the entire survival manual for basic survival.
As long as you have power to your phone.
Yeah, as long as you have power to your phone, even when you're not connected to the internet. And it covers everything from psychology of survival to power, poisonous plants, sea and air travel, all the way up to hostile areas.
I bet there's an app where you can take a picture and say, "Can I eat this?" And it'll tell you yes or no.
There is,
or if
actually.
there isn't, there should be.
I have one of those as well, Karen. It is called Nature ID.
Nature ID, like just
like as in an ID, as identification. And it looks to be some sort of plant. It looks like a cactus sitting in a terracotta pot as the icon. But it will only work with an internet signal, so that needs to be.
Oh, so you can't be in the middle of nowhere. Well, that's not good. But I guess if you're going to take a picture of it.
Yeah, you can. And that's another functionality of your phone that's good. If you are maybe in a situation where you're low on light and you're trying to get back to camp, but you've stumbled across a plant you've never seen before, you can snap a picture of it on your phone. Now you've got a picture of it. And when you get back to camp, you can consult your survival manual if it has any examples of plants or anything in it, or how to identify plants. And you can use that picture to help you identify exactly what that was for next time you come across it.
Probably better for identifying like poisonous snakes. You can take a picture of one and then you can go back and look and say, okay, what are the characteristics of a poisonous snake?
Yeah, exactly. That's another useful tool for it as well, if you're going to use the camera as a survival tool.
But you can eat them. You eat them all.
And the other thing too, that your phone will still have, or should still have, connectivity to in the event that the cell towers go down, is GPS. That should outlast the cell towers because that's coming from satellites in space. So that should theoretically work longer than your cell signal. So you can still use your phone to navigate ideally.
If you know where you're headed.
Yeah, as long as it works and you have some idea of where you're trying to get to. But another good thing that will give you the ability to do, if the GPS is still available, is you'll be able to go on Google Maps, let's say, and you'll be able to see, a satellite view of the area around where you're at, and it'll help you find water sources, places that could be potentially good shelter, places to go look for supplies, that kind of thing. Like having a map just on your phone, Paper maps also should not be discounted. You should still have a paper map.
Paper map
where you plan to be.
You mean MapQuest printed out?
What the hell is that, John? Paper maps?
Yes, you can still buy those at the store.
Can you? Where do you buy them?
I think they're free at the every rest area when you enter every state.
Yeah, pretty much as well. That's also
they're still there.
Yes, they are.
Interesting.
And heck, if none are available, nobody's going to stop you from just taking the one off the wall. It's the apocalypse. Take it with you.
That's true. Just your section. Rip it off. Don't carry your atlas with you.
So let's go back to bug out bags, if I can, for a minute. So what about first aid, John, in your bug out bag?
Oh, top importance. You definitely need first aid supplies. There's any number of good survival type first aid kits available on the market. But if you were going to piece one together yourself.
But you're saying basically any good, like $30 or maybe even under first aid kit is probably enough.
If I was going to suggest anything that you would want to get off of like an Amazon or something, it's one of those things where price influences the decision, but what is more important is the amount of pieces in the kit and what is included. So you want to look for things that have, basic cut and scrape treatments, more serious cut and scrape treatments. Maybe even if you're concerned about it, if you live in an area where it could be of concern to you in this type of scenario, you might want something to pack gunshot wounds with, maybe some quick clot, something that's going to actually help you to really survive a more serious injury while you get somewhere where you can maybe get some assistance or get back to your bigger supply stash. So anything that has some basic stuff for cuts and scrapes, basic medications, painkillers, that kind of thing. The more serious you can find is obviously going to be better, but the average consumer is not going to be able to purchase a first aid kit off the regular consumer market with morphine injectors in it or anything like that.
But what about your prescription medications?
Obviously, you're going to want to take as much of that as you can if it's something that you desperately need to survive.
Again, that's where the old people are going to just start falling over because at some point the medication runs out, right? So.
Yeah. And obviously, I would also say if you're a person that takes vitamins or even if you're a person that doesn't take vitamins, that's something you want to look into as well, is think about vitamin intake. If you could have those as something you can take with a simple sip of water every day, you're obviously going to need to still find food to keep your energy levels up, but it will at least take care of your vitamin needs every day that you're out there.
You did mention something about your main stash, which makes me think it would be a good idea to have places marked where you hide some of your stuff, right? Some of your, maybe, I don't know, first aid, it's stuff that you couldn't carry long distance, but you don't want someone else to get somehow, like treasure. You leave it behind, but you know where it is. So you can circle back or.
Yeah, that would definitely be something good, like little hidden caches for yourself or just around the area where you're going to be. The only
in case someone comes across you and takes all your shit, right?
Exactly.
And you, okay, that happens to you because that happens now. Even people rob you or whatever, or you lose your wallet on the subway or something. And knowing that, okay, yes, this is devastating. They took all my stuff, but you still have some other stuff not that far away from you.
Yeah, exactly. And that would be ideal. It's just something that's going to take some time and some planning to put together. And it's obviously, I would say, going to be something you want to only place or hide in areas that you're familiar with, not just from a navigational sense, but in a sense that all the land you're going to be putting these things on or the areas where you're going to be hiding them is probably not going to be owned by you.
Mhm.
So if during this apocalyptic scenario, if whoever owned that land or that property or that building where you're hiding things saw you on the land during this time period, you would want it to be somebody that's not going to, shoot first and ask questions later, so to speak. You want it to be somebody who's going to be like, oh, hey, Karen, good to see you're making it through this. What's got you passing through? That kind of thing. You're not going to
I
want
would
to
assume
have.
I know my neighbors, which,
Yeah. But you also don't necessarily want them to see you pulling your stash out because
right.
then
No, I
they're gonna
get
be
it.
like, well,
But
hey,
I'm saying,
hold on.
you have your house. People are going to look through houses for food and supplies. So if
Yeah.
you're forced to leave your house for some reason, you don't want to leave all your food and supply everything in your house thinking, oh, I'll just circle back and come and get it, because that's an obvious place to put it, right?
Yeah,
Even if you just hid it in the pine trees behind your house or something, that's not necessarily where somebody would look.
Yeah, and I would say that's a very good point, is if you have the ability somewhere on your property or some adjacent property, like maybe you back up to some green space or some government land with some woods in it, and you can get out there, prior to this all happening and give yourself a little area, maybe a secure container in the ground or something that only you know where it is, like we're talking about. You can definitely plan to take some of your stuff down there to be retrieved later if you ever do need to leave the base completely unattended. But ideally, under perfect circumstances, you would never have to leave it completely unattended. You would be able to leave one or two people there maybe to hold down the fort while everybody else goes out and looks for more gear and supplies and things like that.
Okay.
So
That
Karen,
sense.
Are you saying you have pine trees behind your house where you would hide things?
No, I was being sneaky.
Okay. All right, John, what about like in your go bug out bag, whatever you want to call it? What about paperwork? What about like passports, birth certificates, driver's licenses? Does any of that shit matter at this point?
It's definitely something you're going to want to include, even if it is, depending on your situation where you find yourself, copies might not be good enough. They might require the real thing. So I would definitely try to include that stuff. It's going to be, I feel, more important during the immediate onset of the craziness and less important as time goes on. Because obviously, like a passport or something, if you find yourself in a situation where you are maybe overseas or something in another country and you feel like there's a possibility you could get back, that's something you're obviously going to have on you anyway, but it's something you definitely want to keep with you. You don't want to ditch if you're going to actually try to get back to your country of origin or meet up with anybody that you know personally. But barring that, I think it's really only useful for official identification purposes if you ever encounter any government officials or anybody like that, and they need you to provide government issued identification.
And that's
is your papers.
That's again, if you're talking a zombie apocalypse. But if you're talking a natural disaster or something, those at least copies of those types of things put in a secure place is always a good idea.
It's also
your fireproof box.
Including leases and, all of that, like
property deeds and all that kind of stuff. And going back on the natural disaster point, another good thing to have that I understand is not feasible for everybody, but if it is feasible for you, it's a good thing to keep around. A dedicated credit card that you barely use and pay on, just every month, a minimum. That way, in the event that there is some sort of natural disaster and you're forced to leave the area where you live, and maybe you lose access to your bank or something like that, or you run through all your cash, you still have a credit card. So as long as the mainframe is up, so to speak, and the grid is up, you should still be able to purchase what you need with that, even during a natural disaster.
So you just led me to my next question, which was cash.
Indeed.
Yeah. In case of natural disaster, or who knows, zombie apocalypse, whatever, because we're really talking about just survival in general here, right? Not just zombies, apocalypse shit, right? You may not be able to use your debit or credit cards to make purchases. So you may need cash. So what would you suggest, John? How much?
As much as you can afford.
As much as you can have. I mean,
and I will tell you that gold is worth more than paper money, and it spends the same in every language.
well, here, I will tell you
That's a good
something
point.
that these kind of having cash and all these things, when we lived in California, on Christmas Eve at 4:00 in the morning, an officer came to our front door, knocked on it, and said, "You have to leave," because somebody's natural gas tank had fallen over. It had been raining, and fallen over. And they woke me up and I said,
California.
I said, "We can't leave. It's Christmas Eve." I had 2 small kids, and they said, "You have to go right now. You have to leave right now." So we did. And the only place open was a donut shop, a 24-hour donut shop. And we had, we did okay. We had coats for the kids and shoes and everything, but we realized we weren't prepared at all. And we get there and our neighbor was there. Their kids had no shoes because the policeman, like, right now, get out of your house right now.
So you just grab your bug out bag right by the door.
Well, I should have, but that's after that happened is when I put together the earthquake kit, because I said, we got a C- on this assignment. They were like, we failed because you don't really think about what you need when someone says right now. I mean, out the door, you don't really have time. We couldn't secure our pets. We couldn't do any of that because there was no time and we had no real plan. After that happened, I have carriers for every cat. I have a leash at the door for the dog. I mean, I can pile all that in the car. We had to just leave in that moment. That's when I started to get everything together, when it actually kind of happened to us that we had to go. We had no bug out bag. We had nothing for the kids to do. I mean, luckily I had a photo studio at the time down there. So we just went there, and we had thrown pillows in the car. So they just slept and things. So we had things, but we had nothing. So the earthquake kit had activity books and food. And I just found it the other day. We moved it here. It had baby food in it and stuff. But those are the things that for natural disasters, you need to think about. How are you going to entertain the kids for 3 days when there's no internet?
Tic-tac-toe.
Right. Exactly.
Squares. The kind of shit my mom entertained me with during the church sermon.
But having a plan for your pets is also
I was going to say
Yeah.
that's a good point that you bring up too. So when you're putting together your kit and your bug out bag and all that stuff, particularly if you're ideally going to be at home when everything happens, you're going to want to make sure you're including, things for your pet. Your pet is going to also need water. Now, pets generally don't need to drink, purified water like people do. My dog, I know, she drinks from wherever she wants, and there's nobody that's going to stop her. So
she'll drink as much as she wants.
Yes, she will. She'll drink until she throws up, and then she'll drink that. She doesn't care.
He's crazy about drinking water and shit.
She loves water. But so you need to think about that too. So you're going to need to include, cat food, dog food, all that good stuff. And again, same rules apply to that kind of stuff when you're dealing with that as apply to human supplies. Dry weight is always lighter than wet weight. So try to avoid like the canned wet foods and all that stuff. Simple Ziploc bag with dog food in it is just fine.
right.
Kibbles and
having
bits.
But yeah, thinking about and having any of their medications, in a place that you can grab and have available because
a few months of flea medication doesn't weigh anything. You can easily throw that in with your stuff in the first aid kit and stuff like that.
which brings up the point of bug spray and sunscreen, right?
Indeed.
At least bug spray.
Well, they won't tell you this in California, but my recommendation is 100% DEET because it keeps everything off of you.
But that should probably be just a part of your first aid, right?
Yeah, that should be included with your first aid kit as a part of that. You want to keep good bug spray, good sunscreen, all that kind of stuff. You don't want to die of exposure.
Waterproof matches, John.
Waterproof matches, very important. I cannot stress this enough. The two things you cannot have enough of: cutting tools and fire starting tools. Those are the two things that you cannot pack enough of in a
because it's going to help you with warmth and it's going to help you with cooking, right?
Warmth, cooking. You can use a knife for any multitude of things. You can use it for self-defense. You can use it for hunting. You can use it to make things. You can build stuff with it. You can build a shelter, all that good stuff.
You might get bit by a rattlesnake. You might have to cut your leg and suck that poison out.
And if you can suck the poison out of your own leg, good on you. You're more flexible than I am.
I was going to say, I'm going to die.
If it's on your ankle, here, let me demonstrate.
Well, hot damn, you're more flexible than I am. I'll tell you that.
I'm going to die if that happens. So,
but yeah, I mean, knives and fire starting tools are paramount. You want to be able to make shelter. You want to be able to boil water, and you want to be able to have food.
And without fire, you're dead.
Fire is life.
Yeah.
Well, and again, even for tornadoes or whatever, you're going to want candles if you have, again, because you're going to want to stay. That can help keep the fire lit. Again, I know you don't want to carry those with you because that's extra weight, but if you're in the home, having extra candles and things is always helpful too.
Yeah, and something like a tea light candle is definitely
right,
a few
better.
Tea light candles is definitely something you want to throw in that bag because
it's better than nothing.
If you have a can of soda, an empty soda can, and a tea light candle, you have a stove. You know what I mean? You're not going to be able to cook very quickly, but you can cook on that.
Okay, completely off topic now, and kind of an out there question, but what movie do you think best depicts the zombie apocalypse? Or is it The Walking Dead?
The most realistic, right?
Yes. Is it The Walking Dead, do you think? I know that's not a movie, but
I would say it's probably The Walking Dead from what I've seen. As ridiculous as the show has become and as kind of
I haven't watched it for years.
I know I haven't either, but I know
but
I know
that happens with every show. So the first couple of seasons of it are they, would you almost say, educational?
Yeah, they are. They make you think, right, John?
Yeah, they some of the stuff that happens, you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. And then there's definitely some stuff you see in that show where you're like, that's a terrible idea. That would never work. Don't ever do that. So, take everything they say with a grain of salt. But I would say as far as a zombie apocalypse, I think that is probably the most accurate to what you would see. Another
like the
example,
first couple seasons.
Yeah,
I would say.
And another example I could point to that's a little bit more of a comedic example is the movie Shaun of the Dead. It's got the same style zombies, like the very slow, lumbering, kind of dumb, don't really have any thoughts going on in their ugly little heads, that kind of thing. But I think that's probably the most accurate to what you would see.
Can zombies climb trees?
Depends on the media that you're talking about and who wrote it. But largely,
well, I was just thinking as they're lumbering along, because they tell you in lots of survival things, don't climb a tree because bears can climb. You're not going to get. But can zombies climb trees?
But bears are smart.
Yeah, I would say generally no, because one of the things that you don't see a lot with the zombie trope is there's not a lot of fine motor function. And that's something that's more defined as a fine motor skill, being able to assess which branches you can grab and what's going to hold your
I'm wondering
weight.
if a tree house is the way to go.
Yeah, finding a good foothold and all that shit. Yeah, tree house ain't a bad idea.
Yeah, in a zombie apocalypse, specifically getting up high is a good idea. The only thing you risk is them surrounding where you're at on the ground and you're not being able to get out.
Yeah, then you're screwed. Yeah, okay.
No one can go get water then. You're fucked.
So really, it's about numbers.
So you need a rain barrel up in your tree house.
Yes. You'd have to be self-sufficient.
You need to be
up
in a
there.
rainforest to collect
Yeah,
that
right.
rainwater.
Right.
Hey, I mean, start now, go find some place where you can build your tree house and put a rain barrel in it and start collecting
Like
it
one
now.
of those tree houses on HGTV or
Yeah, that's the kind of treehouse I'd want.
Yeah. One of them with showers and
Yeah, like the Swiss
kitchens.
Family Robinson one, not, flushing toilets and yeah.
And I gotta say, with the popularity now of what's happening with like van and bus culture and people living
That's
in
true.
vans and buses and making RVs and things out of them, don't discount those as options either for long-term shelter, as long as it's something that's feasible for you to be able to get into. That's definitely something that's good to have around. I know I will definitely be taking my work van in the apocalypse versus my
You're just going to
car.
steal it? That's what you're going to do, John?
Oh, who needs it in the apocalypse? It's a painting van. Nobody's gonna miss it.
If only I had that painting van.
My
Damn
boss
it.
has a truck. He'll be fine.
Okay, so do you think if it really would happen and all these zombies are coming for you, do you really think you can outlive the zombie apocalypse? I mean, I don't know what The Walking Dead shows, but at some point, the uninfected are going to be severely outnumbered by the infected.
Maybe.
I presume.
Maybe not.
Unless they come up with some sort of antidote or...
It largely depends on where you are and the level of which this event is taking place. Like if it's virulent and it's airborne, all bets are off. It's anybody's guess what's going to happen. But let's say, this is something that isn't necessarily airborne. It's the typical bitey zombie, and it's something that's, localized to like the US, let's say. We've got more guns in this country than we have people. We'd have that stuff over in like 2 weeks.
John, don't say that.
Well, that's not, yes.
But it's a fact that needs to be thought about in this case,
But, to use a gun, you need ammo as well.
That is true.
Well, most
That's very
people
true.
that have guns have ammo, I would assume.
Well, Karen, when the pandemic hit, John brought me a box of ammo just in case, because that's the kind of son he is.
It's a good idea. It's a good thing to have around.
Well, and you could see during the pandemic, highly dense areas were infected very rapidly, and the lower populated areas took a long time. So you have time if you're not in a very large city. If you're in a big, dense city, I think you're screwed.
But I will tell you, as we saw with the pandemic, when something like that happens, a gun store and places that sell guns and ammo is one of the first places people go to.
Yeah. I wish I owned a gun store back in 2019.
That'd be great, wouldn't it? And not to mention, what you said about urban areas is true, but I live in a very rural area. And even out here during all that, there was none to be found. Everybody was still buying up all of it. So
The ammo.
Yeah, it's something that you definitely, if it's part of your plan, per se, because I'm not going to sit here, I have my views on it, but I'm not going to sit here and tell anybody what they should think. But if firearms are a part of your plan in a survival scenario, stockpiling on ammo is definitely something you should think about doing.
Well, John, I used to go camping to the Red River Gorge, right, with friends over the weekend. And anyone you came upon who knew anything about camping in the Red River Gorge had a firearm. If nothing else, just in case something happens, you can fire a shot and someone may come and save your ass, right?
Yeah, and that's very true too.
But why did you have to have besides that? Are there bears there or something? What were you?
There's wildlife out there, right?
Yeah, in Red River Gorge, I don't know necessarily nowadays.
Which is in Kentucky for anyone listening, correct?
Yeah, I do believe they still have black bear down there. They have coyotes. I think I don't know if wolves are native there, but I know they have coyotes and black bear. And, coyotes, even as small as they are and as skittish as they are, if they're in a group of 10, they're not afraid to try to go after a singular person walking alone.
Especially if you have
that's
a
how they
camp
hunt.
full of food.
Yeah. They hunt in a pack. That's why they yodel. Do you hear them at night yodeling?
Yep.
So, yeah, I think you should always have a firearm if you're going camping. So,
And I think it's definitely a good idea. Local laws, check into that. There's also certain regulations I know, depending on who is actually in charge of the park. If you are staying in a national park, there are rules about that.
Well, it's the national government's in charge, John.
Well, yeah, I know, but I'm just saying, like, national parks vary, even state
by state will have
versus,
different rules.
Yeah, what you're allowed to take into the park
if they're state parks versus
I know
national
when I've
parks. So
gone to the gorge, 9 out of 10 people I come across have a handgun in their belt, visible, so you know.
Yeah, and it's not like that anymore, funnily enough.
Well, that's the way it was.
Every time because I do the same thing when I go to the gorge. I open carry on my belt because it's fine to do in the gorge, I believe, still. But yeah, I always open carry on my belt, but I always got so many looks from people because just nobody does it anymore.
Well, they're fools.
I agree. We did also talk about already that, zombies are attracted to noise. So take that into account when you're thinking about your zombie dispatching methods. Guns do make a lot of noise. So if you can use something like a blunt force weapon or maybe a blade that's going to be quiet, that's...
What are the ways to kill zombies?
Typically what they tell you, and this is kind of a direct quote from Shaun of the Dead, is that you can dispatch them by removing the head or destroying the brain. Generally, kind of with what we've already talked about with kind of the general anatomy of the zombie and how they tend to typically work and appear in popular culture. As long as you destroy the brain, which has the virus or, the fungal infection or what have you that's causing it to do all these things, if you destroy it, it can't control anything anymore. So therefore, the zombie can't bite, can't walk, can't move, can't do anything.
So chopping the head off is one. Setting them on fire was another one. But again, you're risking it doesn't get all the way to the brain then, correct?
And that's going to vary. Your mileage is going to vary on that depending on, level of decomposition and things like that. Somebody who is freshly turned, let's say, it takes a while for bone to burn at normal temperatures. Yes. So you're going to have to get through the skull to destroy the brain with fire.
And so using like a baseball bat or something. So you're saying as long as you can destroy the brain.
Yeah. And you just have to do enough damage to get it to, stop moving, essentially.
So the farther along, the longer they've been out and decaying, the better your chances are.
Yeah, I would say so.
Fresh zombies would be harder to kill.
Yeah, the bone is going to be more dense. There's going to be, the skin is going to be in better shape. It's going to be tougher. It's going to be more resistant to piercing and slicing. I don't know. And you might have
more muscular structure.
Yeah, exactly. And you might have some more insight on this, Karen, with your
background. Dr. Karen.
I'm sure I don't.
I don't know anything about the rate of
decay,
how bone density decays over time. So I don't know, how long you could expect before zombies even just start falling dead themselves because they're
like natural causes, right? From a zombie.
Well, I would think their muscular and other things would decay before their bones because we're still finding bones from like prehistoric man, right, Dr. Karen?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So, but you're saying, so I'm assuming that if they eat, they're going to last longer. And if they don't eat, then they're going to, although they last a long ass time.
But does their nutritional system even work?
I don't know. And the thing is,
the typical average.
You would think
human.
in a dry climate, they would do better than say in the rainforest, because if you're getting wet all the time and your body is decaying, you're going to be in trouble, right? I mean, there have to be different. Walking underwater would not be good for them if they stayed, because wet is going to make it faster.
Yeah, especially salt water, I would say too. When you say, because it could act as kind of a or would it preserves
them a little? Yeah, no, I think I wouldn't hypothetically.
This is all hypothetical, Karen.
There's a place in Tennessee called the Body Farm that I don't know if we've talked about before or not, where they put bodies in different situations. So if you donate your body to science, you could end up there, and they'll submerge a body and leave it and look at it every 12 hours and say, okay, this is what happens. And it helps police work determine, how do you know how long a body's been in the river? Well, they do these kind of things. It's a lab where they do that, or they'll leave it out in the sun, just exposed in a field, or they have all these different things. So bodies are going to decay at different rates depending on where they are and what environment they are. But I'm just saying, as a zombie walking through, I think in some environments they're going to last longer than others because their body parts are just going to fall off at some point, right? They're not going to have legs or
unable
arms.
to walk.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when you're taking into account climate, you got to take into account temperature as well.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going to decay faster, let's say in Florida, than it is in Ontario, Canada, if just left out exposed to the elements, because the cold is going to help preserve, in an ideal scenario, some of the tissues and things like that.
Yes.
Whereas the heat would accelerate the level of decomposition, I would say.
So it sounds like we all need to go to Key West and blow up the bridge.
Is that our meeting place? Okay, listener, if this happens, meet us in Key West.
No, we're just kidding.
There's only one listener. It's okay. We're going to be fine.
Oh, can we have like 24?
Well, hey, we can do the first official real life Scary Spirits podcast meetup during the apocalypse in Key West.
You need what's our password to get onto the island? Scary Spirits?
No, that's too easy. Bananas. That way we know they listened.
Right. See, so if you come in
but we don't say that every episode.
That's the point. You want them to listen to this one. This is how you get your ticket.
Right. You only can get in if you listen to this one. John will be at the gate with his ammo, and if you don't say bananas, you're not getting in.
Yeah, you're not coming in if there's no bananas.
And
if you show up with actual bananas that are edible, then you gain extra points.
Right. You go to the bougie side of the island.
I'm just going to say right now, Key West is not our meeting point. So we ain't going to be there, but you all can go.
But yeah, you feel free, have at
we may get there eventually. Who the fuck knows, right?
Yeah, we'll let you know. We'll send a missive.
Yeah, depends on how long the apocalypse lasts.
Your pigeon should still be around, I would think.
We're just giving you a plan. Everybody, now you know. There's multiple islands there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
But we need to blow up the first bridge, so we have multiple islands to ourselves. So at least that would be my plan.
Well, somebody's going to have to MacGyver the bomb. So, John?
I don't know anything about that.
I think we could do that. I think we could find a way. Just saying. But that's not.
We can just tear it down. I mean,
I
know how to.
Our meeting place, John. It's not our immediate plan.
No, it's not. But you could just tear it down too. You just get in a backhoe and just run into it.
It would take a lot to get there from where we are.
That is true.
So,
but if you're already there, get ready because lots of people are coming with bananas.
Keep the bridge open until John, Karen, and I get there.
That would be ideal. That way we don't have to secure a boat.
And we'll take care of you after that. We have a plan.
Don't make it sound so ominous or they won't let us in.
No, we just have a plan,
Just a little plan. Just a little plan.
Yeah, just democracy. It'll be a democracy.
Okay. So just to kind of sum up what we're talking about here, we have been discussing the zombie apocalypse, but there are takeaways for natural disasters and
just
such.
General disasters. Yeah.
So you want to go over
prepared.
that, Greg? What do you say are the takeaways from this?
No, I don't.
John, would you like to go over what you think the takeaways are for any type of natural disaster?
I would say the key takeaway is just be prepared. You are going to best be able to decide what the things you need to do to prepare are for your given living situation and location. And so just be prepared to keep the things we've talked about in mind, have things like food and water ready to go, have your supplies, your medications, all that important stuff. Keep all that stuff handy and ready to go. And just keep in mind everything we've talked about here so far. And there's a lot more we could cover. So if we decide to do an episode 2, keep those.
I would
things in
say
mind
take
too.
care of yourself.
Yeah, that's
first.
the
Of course you would.
Well, it's the old
Take care of your own.
It's the old airplane thing, put
Everyone in
mask
your
on.
family and your
Right.
household needs a bug out bag so they can carry their own gallon of water.
Yes.
Someone has to carry the pet shit, or you can, get a little pack for your pet and he can carry his own shit. But
My
Yeah,
dog
everyone-
carries her own stuff.
yes, as she should.
But putting it all together in one place, even if it's having it in a fireproof box, you need to have those things ready, because you don't know, especially with the way climate is, things are changing. Hurricanes are coming more often. Blizzards even can knock out your power for days, and you need to be prepared. Earthquakes in California are a big deal. So everybody
Why-
has their natural
Earthquakes
disaster.
everywhere. be a
Yes,
big
somewhere, everywhere, there's something. Tornadoes, earthquakes,
Yeah.
hurricanes. Everybody's got
You
something.
cannot move anywhere where there's not some natural disaster waiting to strike you down. I would say.
Right.
Right.
So cash, water, food, medications, first aid kit, change of clothes,
Firearms.
the ability to make fire,
Knives, bladed objects.
Ammunition.
lightsabers,
herbs. That's all.
solar chargers.
Yes.
Yeah,
All very
you
important.
may need to kill your own food. You gotta, before you can grill it, you gotta kill it. So be prepared.
Hopefully, in a natural disaster, it'll only be about 3 to 5 days, but you might have
So-
to. Yes.
So Karen, you're saying in a natural disaster, you would trust the U.S. government to have everything back up and normal in 3 to 5
No, but
days.
most people live in a reasonable, if you're in an earthquake, you could get somewhere after 3 to 5 days, possibly, or someone could get to you in 3 to 5 days. But things like, look at Katrina in New Orleans. People were stranded for a very long time.
Yeah, and the stores are going to be looted in like hours, not days.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. You don't know what could happen. So it's good to be prepared. That's all.
Yeah, be prepared.
And I've got a list of things to buy on Amazon now.
As you should.
It's always good. Always good.
Yep.
I think
Always.
it's just hit up the camping section, basically, right?
Pretty much. The only other thing I would say is if you're like Karen and you're already headed to Amazon to put together your list, the one thing you do want to take into consideration is look in that product description. Check out the weight of things. Yeah, that tent
Yeah.
might be great, but if it weighs 15 pounds, you're not going to want to
You want to
carry
carry that shit?
I agree. That's a good point. And it's a good point even just for hiking in general. If I did want to ask you, John, have you ever gone like totally off grid, hunted your own food or anything like that? Have you done that camping or not quite?
I have, just never in a serious enough scenario where it really mattered. Like if we didn't get anything, we could always go into town and get food at the store. But more of my experience is relegated to the backpacking field and the general idea of being able to just survive off grid for long periods of time in the woods.
Everything we talked about today could have been applied to hiking the Appalachian Trail, I think.
Have
Yeah.
you read the Bill Bryson book, A Walk in the Woods, about hiking the Appalachian Trail?
I have.
That book made me laugh so much because I'm not a big hiker, mostly because I'm allergic to bees. So it was always something that I didn't want someone to have to drag me 15 miles back down a mountain because I got stung.
Because you got to have an EpiPen in your bug
Doesn't
out
matter.
bag, Karen.
I do, but you still have to go to the hospital after that. But anyway, in that book,
Do you?
yes, he's hiking with a buddy, John. I don't know if you recall it. And the backpack weighs a shit ton, apparently. And the buddy at some point just starts throwing shit over a cliff because he doesn't want to carry it anymore because it's too heavy. Because you start off all the Appalachian Trails, obviously very, very long. And you start off with all this new equipment and all this, and you realize very quickly, you don't need all that shit. It's too heavy to carry it every day. And so he just starts throwing shit.
That happens.
Funny.
That happens all the time in real life when people do trails like that. They don't typically throw it off a cliff because obviously then you're polluting and you're wasting money.
Right.
But they'll wait till they get into town and they'll take it to like a retailer or like an outfitter and they'll be like, please buy this stuff from me, or can you at least like
for $1
send it? Yeah, can you send it back to my house so that I don't have to carry it anymore? And they'll send stuff back home that they don't need and things.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
I heard walking that trail that you can get into town and have people have sent you things to the town. Like new boots or socks or whatever you find you need, you can pick up, which I thought was pretty cool. That was in a different book I read. I don't remember what it was, but
yeah, pretty much everybody that does those long trails, they'll coordinate either on trail or before they go, just in case communication is spotty.
Right.
They'll communicate with somebody back home who knows when to send things to towns based on when they should get there and when to check in based on when they should get into towns and things
which
like
is
that.
Also a good idea because then you're checking in.
Exactly.
And people, right, and will know that you got to a certain point.
But that ain't going to help you in the zombie apocalypse.
No, it's not. But if you're hiking, that's going to help you.
Yeah.
Long trails. You're right. Carrying things.
Or some other natural disaster. But yeah.
Right.
And if you're in a group of people, don't be afraid to spread that weight out, like we were talking about before, everybody needs to carry their weight.
Hey, asshole, carry this shit.
Well, like if I'm backpacking.
Ooh, that's going to make everybody want to be in Greg's group.
Very true. Very true.
But I might have a big gun, Karen.
I'm sure you do.
But anyway,
let's
like if I'm backpacking with like a friend or, like a significant other or something, I'm not going to carry the whole weight of the tent.
Right.
Like, I'll carry the poles and you can carry the body of the tent. You know what I mean? Like we're sharing this because we're both using.
And that's the advantage of a group.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. That you can spread out the weight.
A small
of things.
Group.
Right. I agree. A small group.
I would say you don't ever want a group more than 10. That'd be your max, I think. Try to keep it less than that. Even.
All right. Some of my family's going to have to go then. There's too many of us. We're going to have to subgroup.
That's it. See now you're thinking, Karen. So you set up multiple settlements and you work in cooperation with each other.
Yeah.
Right. And then we keep other people away.
Exactly.
Damn Wallaces aren't coming in our camp.
Yeah, if you need to, have additional forces come in, you have another group right across the valley there. You can call in to come and protect you with their swords and spears.
I'm sure Jack would love to be made in charge of long range artillery. So
yes,
if you can get a hold of some of that, you can set him up on the other side of the valley.
He's going to be a little engineer. So yeah, I got that covered.
Right. Anything else we need to cover?
No, I think John summed it up pretty well.
Okay.
If you have any questions, you can email us at info@scaryspirits.com. We'll do our best to answer it. Check with John, see what he thinks.
Listen, thank you, John, for joining us on this episode of Scary Spirits Podcast, Wicked Ramblings.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Let me know if you ever want to do a survival sequel, and we could do a part 2, cover things we didn't cover in the last one.
I think if you wanted to get into something a little more detailed, that would be great. I think this is just kind of an overall general for people like me who don't have the bug out bag yet or have even thought about what to do in these kinds of situations. It's a good starting point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, long-term survival, I'm probably going to be a zombie. Let's just be honest. And I'm old, so my arms will just fall off at some point. So you won't have to worry about me.
Karen, I will shoot you in the head if I need to.
You probably do that even if you didn't need to. Oh, look, she's drooling. She'd shoot me.
Like the Monty Python skit when he's like, "Bring out your dead," and he's like, "I'm
Bring out
still
your
alive,"
dead.
and he's like, "No, you're not."
Yeah, look at her. She's limping. She can't keep up. He'd just shoot me. Be over. I know how it's all going to go down. It's okay. I'm not sure I'm made for the zombie apocalypse.
All right. Well, I guess thank you for joining us for this episode of Wicked Ramblings. And thank you for listening to our previous two. The response has been rather overwhelming, I would say, Karen.
Oh, has it? That's awesome.
Yes, it has, Karen.
Jon, it's always fun to talk with you.
Always good to be here and fun to talk with you too.
Remember, we are not experts, and this podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
So be prepared. And as always, please drink responsibly.
Yes.
Hey, it's Karen, and I'm here to talk to you about getting social with us. Did you know you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Scary Spirits Podcast? Or check out our website, scaryspirits.com. If you have something to say, email us at info@scaryspirits.com. And as always, thanks so much for listening. Please drink responsibly.